Good afternoon and welcome to the CIP exam info session. Today we will be discussing what the CIP credential is, the value for sitting for the certification exam, and what that process will look like. Afterwards, we will jump into an interview with a CIP Council member to learn about her experience being certified. Hopefully this will be useful and alleviate some anxiety, especially for our first-time applicants. My name is Keandra Myrick. I'm the certification coordinator. And with me today, I have our CIP council member that I will allow to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Chris Whitwer. I am a policy analyst at the NIH, and I am a member of the CIP Council. Thanks for having me today.
So what is the CIP credential? The purpose of the CIP credential is to improve the quality of HRPPs and IRBs by promoting ethical practices and advanced knowledge. The CIP constitutes formal recognition of a professional's broad knowledge of HRPP functions and expertise in the applicability of regulations. It strengthens the quality of human subjects research by providing an established body of relevant knowledge and national standards of practice in HRPP and IRB administration. So let's talk a little bit about the history of the credential. CIP credential was developed in 1999, and since then, more than 3,000 individuals nationally and internationally have become certified. We even have some people who have maintained their credential throughout the entire time it has been active. So let's talk about the CIP Council. The CIP Council is responsible for overseeing the exam content, eligibility guidelines, and recertification guidelines for the credential. It's made up of a volunteer group of subject matter experts who work closely with Primer and PSI, which is the company that provides professional testing services, in managing our programs. Why become certified in the first place? CIP credential has actually become a highly sought after commodity for employers, and over the past few years, more and more job descriptions have either preferred or mandated that their employees be certified. So what are the eligibility guidelines? To be eligible to take the exam, candidates must have at least 24 months of full-time experience performing the IRB administrative functions that we'll discuss in a moment within the last 7 years. The job functions you see listed here are the functions relevant to the CIP credential. So managing HRPP policies and procedures, managing pre-review of IRB materials, managing review of IRB materials, managing exempt study review determinations, managing protocol approval or reliance process, managing regulatory documentation, managing IRB records and databases, facilitating IRB meetings, developing and providing education on IRB regulations and processes, providing consultation on IRB submission, monitoring for changes in federal regulations and guidance, managing review of non-compliance and unanticipated problems, and managing IRB minutes. Managing encompasses administering, coordinating, executing, and overseeing these tasks. IRB chairs, members, and organizational officials who perform these functions may have the required experience and may be eligible to sit for the exam. Service as an IRB member alone is not sufficient to fulfill the requirements for relevant IRB experience. Interacting with an IRB office on an occasional or even a routine basis, as is common with sponsor and study site personnel working in a study coordinator, study administrator, or investigator position, does not meet the requirements for relevant experience. You don't have to participate in each of the job functions that we've listed to be eligible. If you've gone through the guidelines and you're still unsure of your eligibility, you can always send your work verification forms, multiple forms if that's applicable to you, and a copy of your CV that outlines your relevant job functions to certification@primer.org. So let's talk about what the process will look like when you apply for the CIP exam. Candidates may submit their application online or complete using the application form in the CIP handbook. However, we recommend that candidates go through the online route for faster processing. So go to primer.org/CIP to apply online. Candidates must complete their application in full using their name exactly as it appears on their current government-issued ID, such as a driver's license or passport. Using alternative names, even if your name is Nicholas and you shorten it to Nick, that will result in you being denied from taking your exam at the scheduled appointment. So I would like to stress, please make sure that you register using your name as it appears on your ID. All candidates applying for initial certification must upload a copy of their current CV that includes their relevant experience, as well as their work verification form or forms as a part of their online application. And the instructions for the online or mail-in applications are written out in the CIP exam handbook. So you've submitted your application. Now let's discuss what will happen during that review process. So the CIP Council might request additional information or clarification regarding your application. Primer staff will reach out and work with you to ensure all of the relevant information is submitted. To expedite your application review, provide clear and complete information on your work verification form and CV when you submit it. Your CV should include the HRPP and IRB administrative functions for which you are responsible. Review of complete applications can take up to 2 weeks. So once your application is approved, you'll receive your confirmation email from Primer, and you'll be able to schedule your appointment through the online portal. You'll have a 90-day testing window in which you'll be authorized to take your exam. This will begin the day your application is approved. So for that reason, we recommend that candidates hold off on applying until they're prepared to take the exam. But things happen, so if you're unable to take your exam within your 90-day window, you do have the option to submit a one-time transfer request to PSI. If this request is not submitted before the last day of your testing window, you will forfeit your exam fees and you will need to submit an entirely new application. The transfer form is available for download on the exam webpage, and there's also a copy of it in the candidate handbook. If your application is denied, Primer will notify you and your exam fees will be refunded, minus the $6 processing charge. So now we're just going to talk about exam preparation. The body of knowledge content outline is the framework of the exam, and it's divided into 3 sections. The percentages on the screen indicate the number of questions on the exam from each section. This is what you're going to build your study guide off of. There are handouts available for download on our website, so if you're taking notes, don't worry about writing this next section down as we go through this. The Human Subjects Protection content area focuses on historical background of human subjects research ethics, the Belmont principles, and international codes and standards that govern human subjects protection, and the federal regulations that govern human subjects research. The IRB responsibilities questions are all based on the federal requirements of institutional review boards, not organizational policies and procedures. So this means if your program does something different, but it's still within the regulations, we will not test on that. For example, if your program takes all studies to the convened IRB, even those that qualify for expedited review, that is your process and we wouldn't test on that. So make sure you know when your organization's practices are different than what is required by the federal regulations. The third section of the exam is on institutional responsibilities. These are based on the federal requirements governing human subjects research that are placed on institutions as opposed to those placed on IRBs. The companion to our body of knowledge content outline is the references and resources document. This is also another essential study tool when preparing for the exam. This document lists the source documentation for each of the exam questions and includes federal regulations, policies, guidance, and FAQs. The CIP exam is rooted in the federal regulations that govern human subjects research, so the best thing to do is become familiar with the regulations themselves. You will find source documentation for each of the exam questions along with federal regulations, policies, and guidance and FAQs on our website. Beyond these items, the CIP handbook also has a list of other resources and study aids. So let's talk about your study plan. This will be different for everyone, but we have a few tips on where to start. Budget your time. Again, this is why we recommend that candidates hold off on applying until they feel mostly prepared to take their test. Focus on unfamiliar topics. Understand your learning style, which we'll talk more about in a second. Develop study materials to accompany that learning style. And of course, on-the-job learning is the most valuable resource for you. So there are 4 main types of learning styles: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and reading and writing. And there are actually some online quizzes that will provide guidance as to which style aligns best with your preferred learning method. Many people find that they learn best through a combination of these methods. So if you're interested, take that quiz and try to develop materials that accommodate that learning style best. There are no primer official study guides or trainings for the exam. Candidates are encouraged to use the body of knowledge content outline when develop their own study guides. So just be aware when looking for study materials out there. If you would like the opportunity to have a virtual or local study buddy, you can send an email with that request to certification@primer.org, and we will include you on the list, pair you with a partner when one becomes available. We also have a study group on Facebook and LinkedIn. You might actually connect with someone there a bit faster than going the study buddy list route. So you passed your exam now. What happens? You'll receive your exam results within 1 hour of completion via email, and this will be to the email address that you used to register. You'll receive a confirmation letter via email to that same address with your certification details a few days later. And then a few weeks later, your hard copy of your certificate will be mailed to you after you pass. So good luck to everyone. If you have any questions about this process, you can always reach out to us at certification@primer.org. And we will now transition into our interview with our council member. All right. So Chris, I hope you're doing well today.
Thank you. And you too.
So let's just go ahead and jump in. How long have you been working in the IRB field?
I began working in the IRB field just before the original HIPAA implementation date of April 14th, 2003. So 20 years.
Wow, that's quite a while.
It's a bit surreal, frankly, yeah, to be able to say that.
So what was your organizational role when you initially certified?
I was a consent form editor at Quorum Review IRB, which was a commercial IRB later acquired by Advara. So I was a consent form editor.
And what's your current role now?
I'm a policy analyst for the NIH's Intramural Research Programs, Office of Human Subjects Research Protections, in the Office of Policy and Accreditation. So my responsibilities there include developing and maintaining HRPP policy, AHRP accreditation, and right now I'm working on an informed consent readability project as well.
And how did you become aware of the CIP program?
It was actually word of mouth. In my very first IRB role at the Medical University of South Carolina, one year my colleagues came back from the Primer AER conference and they were talking about sitting for the exam there. And they were really excited to have had the opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge and competency and to get to add initials after their name. And so that's how I heard about it.
So how would you describe the impact becoming certified has had on your career in the time that you have maintained your credential?
Yeah, thank you. In addition to demonstrating my knowledge in the field and allowing me to pursue roles that required it, the CIP certification has also given me some legitimacy that I wouldn't otherwise have when working with researchers or collaborators.
Okay. Has your relationship with Primer presented networking opportunities that you may not have been exposed to otherwise?
Oh, absolutely. I've got so many Primer friends now whom I can reach out to and who've helped me build my career in one way or another. You know, at one point I spent almost a decade as an office of one with no in-house HRPP colleagues. And so during that time, Primer was really instrumental in helping me stay connected in the field and helping me stay educated. From the affinity groups at conferences to the SBER network to volunteer roles. I enjoyed facilitating book group discussions at the book group lunches at a couple of conferences, serving on the Diversity Advisory Committee, and now as a member of the CIP Council, which is a role that it's just a tremendous honor. I'm so happy to be able to serve in that role. And I just want to say, I would definitely recommend Primer's volunteer roles to build your network and to really enrich your knowledge of this field.
Thank you. So many candidates become certified to fulfill a job or promotion requirement. However, I've noticed through working with candidates that some choose to maintain their credential after leaving the field or, even after retirement. So as someone who's held a long-term certification, how have your feelings about certification evolved throughout the years of maintaining your credential?
Well, I started out thinking the same way as you described. I sought certification to be eligible for positions that required the credential and to be competitive as a candidate, particularly since I do not hold a graduate degree. Today, though, I see the credential as evidence of my commitment to human subjects protections, and I've maintained it ever since, regardless of the professional roles I've held.
So has being CIP certified helped you deal with instances at your job? Can you provide some examples of problems your credential helped you solve?
Sure. As a CIP, I've been able to educate IRB staff, researchers, and students, which of course always makes things go better later, to advise researchers on submitting approvable IRB submissions. I've been able to develop collaborative relationships with study teams and to sit on an IRB. Um, you know, I have I'm also proud of having helped a commercial IRB think about the relevant human subjects protections issues while reviewing their very first whole genome sequencing study, which is a study that I had submitted. So it was great to talk to them about it as a CIP and help them navigate that first study.
Okay. And last question, has the credential opened up any professional or consulting opportunities for you?
It has. It has indeed. I'm no longer consulting, but I have held a few consulting roles over time. Um, there's one example that I'd like to share today, and that is that at one time I worked for an institution that was facing layoffs, and I was in a very small department. We were asked to cut our payroll by half of an FTE, and so we had some tough decisions to make. And it turns out that a collaborator right down the street needed an IRB professional part-time, but regularly, like a couple times a week at least. And so they offered to pay a portion of my salary to do that work. And it was a win-win for both institutions. Everybody's needs were met, and I learned a lot while working for the other institution, expanding my skill set and my network both. So if I hadn't been a CIP, I would not have been able to do that.
Great. Well, that is it for today. Thank you to everyone for attending. And Chris, thank you so much for your time and help with this. I hope everyone found this valuable and helpful. And we look forward to seeing all of your applications.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.